Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. I hope you and yours are well. This could possibly be our last prism till we have the recess is over and we're all back in business. Then again, our politicians tend to do things that means that we never seem to get that summer break and we have to keep coming back. If it's anything like this week, well, it'll be no different. That we'll be back soon. And so let's get started without further ado, because it was a heck of a week. We had, of course, right at the beginning of the week, Phil, our man here, Mr. Starmer, chucked it. He called it a day, resigned a few days after we'd announced last week in our show that he was going to take a view over the weekend after he had Burnham had won the election. So were you surprised to see him resign so quickly?
Yes, and I know the pressure was mounting, but they tend to set this out until they're ready for the next phase and for the next Muppet to have a wee shot at being leader. But they're all controlled. It makes no difference. You don't get to sit in that chair or even be close to sitting in the chair of the Prime Minister unless you're very much kowtowing to the people that really run the show. So why did they resign? Well, probably we'll never really know, but was it the accusations of rent boy arsony or what? But reading MSM, mainstream media, you can randomly select any of these organisations and they quote there are the key moments of his 2 years as a prime, less than 2 years in fact. He resigned after 23 months in power in the wake of the record local election losses and mounting pressure from his own MPs. That's it in a nutshell. His resignation, obviously, as you mentioned, followed Andy Burnham's dramatic victory in the Makerfield by-election. We can talk about that later. And that was a result that was seen by many as proof that the former Greater Manchester Mayor is able to beat Reform in a way that Keir can't. But he took office in July 24, landslide victory after the chaos that was Liz Truss, lettuces, and the absolute mess that was the Tories, particularly under Boris and Rishi Sunak. But there's five main reasons you could say. One, Labour MPs increasingly loss of faith in him. Two, Andy Burnham's emergence as a serious contender. The policy U-turns damaged his credibility severely, and the scandals and high-profile missteps kept adding pressure. But the key one is Labour's falling popularity and Reform's UK rise. To be honest, I don't see any difference between Labour, Conservative, and Reform. I think they're just outright winging each other at the moment, and at the moment there's Reform are a nose in front, but more on that later, I'm sure, as we talk about the prospects of where Labour go from here. Yeah,
down the toilet, hopefully. Here's the thing, as soon as he went, all the usual suspects and sycophants and the clique, what a man devoted his life to the party terribly. He only became an MP in 2015. Now, to work your way through the ranks from 2015 and you become the Prime Minister in under 10 years, it's pretty remarkable. And it makes me, was he removed by the same people who promoted him up to be the Prime Minister? Because let's not kid ourselves on either. It's not the Parliament, and it's not these crosses in the box that we put every 5 years. And it's not the MPs sitting there that decide things. There's other people making those decisions. But he was by no means a decent, honourable man, as people are trying to tell us. This is the same guy who said quite blatantly that he would starve the people of Palestine. He would cut off the right to food, to water, to electricity to the 2 million people. He participated in a genocide, and yet the media trying to, what a great guy, he'll now be an elder statesman. It's all performative stuff.
Wonder how long before he's sitting in the House of Lords. We need to remember the scandals that have either followed him around or he's followed them, depending what way you look at it, because he was obviously director of public prosecutions over a period in UK history when certain people who should have been prosecuted weren't. Let's never lose sight of that fact. And one of the biggest scandals surrounding him is to do with Peter Mandelson. And the more that comes out about Peter Mandelson, the worse it gets. So that's got a lot to do with the decision by those behind the scenes who work the puppets, the puppet masters, that it was time for Starmer to go, because there will be more to come out of that. And it's such a sad reflection on UK politics that we're so used to scandals, and you watch them play out, and we've obviously got plenty of our own in Scotland too, but you watch them play out and you know that there's one inevitable outcome, but they don't just put their hands up and go at the time that they've been caught out. They hang on in there. And for the life of me, I just can't see any logical explanation for Starmer resigning at a point in time when he's been challenged by somebody who was quite clearly groomed by those behind the scenes, not only to become able to stand in a by-election, having previously been barred from doing so by Starmer, but able to persuade somebody to step aside to create that vacancy at no little cost to the public purse, unnecessarily so. And are you telling me that there was nobody in the ranks of the Labour Party sitting in Westminster before Burnham's election that was unable to take over from Starmer? How can that be? That is a very, very poor reflection on all the Labour MPs who were elected in 2024, including those many that were elected from Scotland. So the absolute brass neck of the entire Labour Party to behave in that fashion, and then to go campaigning in a by-election that they created as if there was any justification for the by-election in the first place, that they think we're all daft. So I don't weep any tears for Starmer, but I would weep tears for the future of the United Kingdom if this current parliamentary setup continues, where you're able to just stand aside, get somebody else elected, and then change the leader and thereby change the Prime Minister without going to the electorate. And where that really galls me is all the years that Tories arguing and infighting and stabbing each other in the front and in the back. The SNP were constantly sniping about how there should be a general election if there's going to be a change of Prime Minister. Well, the SNP could be demanding a general election right now and take that opportunity to turn that into a de facto referendum on Scottish independence. Now, it's not likely that Westminster would concede that there should be a general election, but there's a democratic argument in its favour, and that is certainly something that the SNP should seriously consider doing. They should lodge a motion to that effect at Westminster, and you might find it gets support from rising places, and that would be a positive development out of this mess from a Scottish perspective.
Well, always when there is, someone crosses the floor, the opposition, members of Parliament or members of the Scottish Parliament or whatever it is, we need a by-election, they should fight a by-election or they should fight a general election. But that's not the way this corrupt system that we have operates, Terry. We elect an individual. That individual then chooses a whip or a party. When that goes into that party chooses the leader. So it's not presidential where you elect someone like Trump, God help us, but we've done it ourselves. So it's a nonsense, and it's a red herring for those to shout about, we demand a general election. It's never going to happen, is it?
No, it's never going to happen. It's all set up. It's all planned beforehand. We talk about the fight between Burnham and Starmer and who's going to win. It was determined long before this ever happened. They set it up so that Burnham would be able to stand in the by-election. They set it up so that he would be the challenger, and then Starmer graciously retires from the race. It's all mince. It's all about let's get our boy in now. And look who's behind them. Look, look at who they're pals with. The Labour Friends of Israel. What's his face? The new chief of staff is a guy called Parnell or something.
Yeah,
and
we're coming on to him.
Is absolutely Labour Friends of Israel, and he's now Burnham's chief of staff. You can't get clearer than that. It's Starmer light or Starmer heavy that's coming in again. We're just getting the same thing time after time after time. Yes, we should be having a general election, but are we going to have one? Well, no. And Scotland should be saying, we need a general election, time to do something, and we could do something about that. But we won't do that either because, hey, we have a crowd of fearties in our Scottish government in Holyrood. We have people who just want it to stay the same. And that's the problem. Everything about our politics is corrupt. I want us to do what the Senate do, where they say, you lied, you're out. Here's your jotters, leave now. Why don't we do that? Why don't we bring truth and honesty into politics instead of all this constant lying, constant obfuscation, and constant Machiavellian processes? Why? Because it doesn't suit us, because the big boys who are paying for it are the boys who are leading us in everything. We don't have a choice. We like to think we have. We like to think our vote gives us a choice. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Sorry.
You're right. The reason we don't do it and make the liars leave, because you'd have 650 by-elections every parliament, because they're all a sure lying. Nearly saying a bad word there. They're all lying, so that's one of the reasons, because they don't stop lying. But this is a first for me. People are popping in and out here, left, right, and centre. We're having a few issues. Well, I'm just getting ready to speak to, hopefully speak to Mark when he comes back. Where's Terry? She's back in the room. We've lost it. Where's Mark? Come back, Mark. All is forgiven. There you are.
There he is.
Sorry about that, folks. A bit of sound problems there. Rory, I assume you asked me a question that I missed?
No, not yet. I'm just about to. You're lucky. I was playing for time there. Here's a first. Not often I agree with this young lady, but she was absolutely right. They're all painting Starmer out to be such a decent man. He was nothing like it. Catastrophic. As I said, I showed earlier there, he was all for a genocide. He was backing it. Not only did he support the genocide and arm the Israelis, the Royal Air Force were flying flights for them. We were involved in that. We'd involved in that genocide. He lied. He 10 things when he came in to become leader of the Labour Party, Mark. He flipped on every one of them. Every policy he put, he flipped on them. He promised us, that he would, support the WASPy women when he was in opposition. He just lied again. And that's the problem. They're painting him out to be a decent guy. Nothing decent about him.
I would completely agree. I think if he was a decent human being, he wouldn't have been in that position to begin with. And his resignation, if he was decent, he would have fallen on his sword when the Mandelson scandal broke. But part of me thinks maybe he actually wanted to. But the men in grey suits, I think as they call them, probably had him bunkered in there until they had teed up a suitable replacement that will carry on the same abhorrent policies that he's done, especially with respect to what's been happening with arming Israel and assisting them in the genocide in Gaza. So, is he decent? I don't think so. Would he have? I think he would probably, given the choice, would have resigned earlier. But I think, like I say, the grey suits didn't have their candidate teed up in time, because whoever's going to come in, it's going to be a continuation of the same abhorrent policies.
Yeah, that is just the way of it. And what actually happened was, of course, as we've alluded to, is that Burnham was elected. And rumour has it that he will have a coronation film. There will be no contest. And in fact, we were talking just before we started recording here, and in the last 10, 15 years, I don't know how long, we've only had one competition, which was between the Lettuce and Rishi Sunak, and the Lettuce won. From Theresa May onwards.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, from Theresa May onwards, there's been no. In fact, she was no contest. There was that one contest, and then with Boris, no contest, etc. So it's all a load of nonsense. We're kidding ourselves on if we think we're influencing politics by getting across every 5 years.
Yeah, I'll let some of the rest of the guys talk to that one, but Coronation is correct. You don't get allowed near this chair if you're not in the pockets of those who are really in control. And to spell it out, it means just to make sure people understand that the politicians are just the most senior level of the servants that support and work for the people that really run what's going on, which is, if you need it spelled out again, the billionaires. We should have a trillionaire. You know, the military-industrial complex, Eisenhower warned us about it in '61, big pharma, energy, banks, particularly finance, they're the worst of it. But anyway, look at every one of them. I mean, the exception being Corbyn. So Corbyn, if you remember, the Labour members and voters brought him in, forced him into contention. And within 10 days of election of leader, the Jewish Chronicle had a 10-point critique on him, labelling him as anti-Semitic. And the mainstream media piled on, and he was deconstructed, because that's what Britain does. His resignation, Starmer, triggers a decisive leadership election, right, with Andy Burnham sent to run with the backing of former Health Secretary Wes Streeting. So rather than go against each other, the sham that would be that, they get rid of the guy that's melting the Labour vote, and they bring in a guy who looks like he can beat reform. He's proven it. Well, the other MPs mull over challenges themselves. They're all jockeying for position now. So there'll be a deal cut with Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham. And Burnham's victory in Makerfield, you know, it was a by-election effectively. It's by the starting gun for the leadership challenge against Keir Starmer. And it was the final trigger for his long-awaited resignation from what I understand from reading. So he defeated Reform UK, this is significant, Robert Kenyon by 9,231 votes, and defied national trends to increase Labour's share of the vote in an area where Nigel Farage, his Reform UK, have made sweeping gains in last month's local elections. So that is the most significant aspect to this. And his victory was seen as some as proof that the former Greater Manchester Mayor can beat Reform. The big one for me, though, is it was Terry mentioned it first. He's appointed ex-Labour Friends of Israel chair as his chief of staff. Let's look at that a wee bit more detailed. Okay, the guy's James Purnell, and Purnell was the chairperson of the parliamentary lobby group Labour Friends of Israel, APEC in America, LFI in the UK for 2 years. And these are the people, I'll put it this way, Labour Friends of Israel appoint a handler to Starmer, and Starmer is handled because he's bought and sold. The former MP was also DWP secretary under Tony Blair and has been described as the architect of Labour's discriminatory contributory principle on benefits. He's argued against vital benefits such as the winter fuel allowance and free bus passes, dismissing them as freebies, and is linked to the right-wing blue Labour. So is there any change from Starmer's right-wing stance? No, it's an absolute lie. His appointment is worrying for opponents of genocide and anyone who's less well off and or vulnerable. So civilization. This guy's appointment is bad for civilization. Purnell-backed right-winger David Miliband in the 2010 Labour election leader and became a BBC director under the Tories. He now runs corporate political lobbying firm Flint Global, who were responsible for moving the general consensus for the Overton window to the right. So this guy is not our friend.
No. You were saying that, Starmer was given a handler, or, was it the Ukrainian Rain Boys that were handling him? I mean, I'm not quite sure. That's what you were. I don't know if that's what you were implying. I wouldn't imply that.
You may say so. I couldn't possibly comment.
But the other thing is, even when he stood Starmer originally against, he talked about Jeremy Corbyn, my friend. I mean, he was even dishonest and lying about that. He was in the conspiracy. He talked about Jeremy Corbyn and then kicks Jeremy out of the party completely. And Jeremy Corbyn, let's remember, folks, Jeremy Corbyn got the highest Labour vote there's ever been in decades.
Yeah.
They had the largest party in Europe. They had over 500,000 members because they had actually gone back to their roots of dare I say, they used the word quietly, socialism, which the public wanted.
I think people forget that it was Jeremy Corbyn's performance as the leader of the Labour Party that denied Theresa May a majority. So that was a very important, almost pivotal moment in some respects. I don't know where we're going in the UK in the absence of Scottish independence, quite frankly, as I said earlier. I don't want to be part of this United Kingdom, if you want to call it that. And what sticks in the craw is, while we've been recording this, wee video flashed up on my phone, and it's our First Minister, John Swinney, at Edinburgh Castle, about to, in essence, unlock the key to the door of the room where they keep the Crown of Scotland. And the Scottish Crown Jewels will become available and on display today for King Charles, that's King Charles of England, coming to Scotland for, in essence, the state opening of the Scottish Parliament. And I would love to have been a First Minister who was able to say to the King, no, you're not getting your hands on the Scottish Crown because you've got no right to it.
Correct.
Instead, we've got this pantomime in Scotland today, where, as Phil tends to say most weeks to remind us, and as he said in his speech at Yes United in Glasgow, 1 in 4 children in Scotland are living in poverty. We're having a wee bit of a heat wave just now, but later on in the year, we know perfectly well that thousands of Scots, if not hundreds of thousands of Scots, will be concerned about electricity bills, gas bills, food bills, the cost of energy in an energy-rich country. We will continue to see a housing crisis, various crises in the health service, including, for example, the postponement, if not cancellation, of the new Monklands Hospital, the announcement of which was held off until after the election. And the list is endless. And I would like us to be talking about what we do in an independent Scotland when we are independent, and talking about the route to independence. And nothing underscores that more than the pantomime of what you've seen in Westminster in the last few weeks, when your eye has been constantly diverted away from the things that we should have been speaking about to what's going on with Starmer, what's going on with Burnham, is Burnham going to win, by how much is he going to win, what is the reform vote going to be, will Labour hold up, what about the Tories? And we've got to keep an eye on that, because it affects us whilst we are part of the United Kingdom. But people of Scotland need to wisen up and understand we need unity in our movement so that we can get Scottish independence and be talking about the Scottish Prime Minister, and not nonsense about how beautifully and intricately created the Crown of Scotland is. I mean, I just find that whole thing offensive. Sorry, I diverged, but it just gets to me.
Yeah, well, we'll be coming on to the King of England, Charlie, shortly. I've got a wee item about him. But Mark, here's the thing, that we're getting rid of Starmer, who we know is a neoliberal. We know he's a Zionist. He's pro-genocide. He's anti-Scottish, anti-democratic, against the Holyrood. He's against devolution. He's against everything that we in Scotland stand for. And to add credence to that, this is our man Burnham said that if a while ago that if, in the event that he became Prime Minister, his first overseas trip would be to Israel. So we're getting another exact same. It's a clone. He's no different to what we've had.
No, absolutely. And I mean, and if you look at some of the comments he's made about Scotland while he was mayor of Manchester, he's very much of the mindset that he sees Scotland not as a sovereign nation but as a region. He's I think he's backpedaled on some of the comments he's made about wanting to cut funding. Look at the Barnett formula and reappraise that. And you can guarantee if they look at the Barnett formula, it won't be providing Scotland with a fair share of what we generate. It'll be taken away from us. So in some respects, he's another clone, but I think he could actually be more dangerous towards Scotland from a funding point of view, and just the sheer contempt he shows for us. So I'm nonplussed about him coming in, because I think it is just he'll be no different to Starmer, and in some respects possibly worse. I think we've lost everyone.
Oh, I don't know who's left.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely the case. So I think that Roddy, you're back.
Yes, I hope you kept talking among yourselves there when I was away.
Aye, we were just about to move on, but there we go. Crack on. It seems we've lost Mark, but there we go. I don't know, what is it? Somebody's mucking about with us. Who knows?
I don't know, we have a lot of problems. We pay thousands for this software, ladies and gentlemen, and it keeps doing this. We don't know what the hell's going on with it. Mark, did you get my question about his first trip to Israel?
I did. I mean, that shows you where his priorities lie. You know, I mean, why would you need to go there to, you know? Well, you can tell who he's showing deference to. You know, is who controls him. So I think that is incredibly telling. It's also quite interesting if you consider that it was one of the questions that was put to the New York mayor about if he got elected, the first country that he would visit. And he gave a very eloquent answer as to why it wouldn't be Israel. And you would think against that backdrop, Burnham might have realised that he's not reading the room in this. You know, I think it exposes him for what he is. It's going to be more of the same. So
correct. He will back Israel. He will back the fascists in Ukraine. He will back neoliberalism. He will back austerity. He will ignore Scotland and its democratic decisions. Nothing's going to change whatsoever, folks. Nothing at all. But the paper's already starting, Terry. They want to tell us that our man Burnham understands Scotland. We're to believe that he understands us. And you know, he's going to get all the great guy, good guy. I would go with the third answer.
Great guy, good guy.
Exactly.
Aye, please pull the other one. It's got bells on. Dear God, the man is just the epitome of horror coming in to Westminster. We already had Stammer, who turned out to be pretty awful, but this guy is worse. This guy has had a success with Manchester. Everybody loved him in Manchester. And now, you know, everybody thinks, oh, he can do wonders. He's going to shake the whole thing up and everything's going to be great and people are going to be really happy. Scotland's going to be the first ones to get it in the neck. But then everybody else will as well. DWP is having a look at that. What's going on with that? We're going to have to do something about that. We're going to have to do something about these WASPy women. They can bugger off. Who's interested in them? It's all about cutting back and getting as much money there. Now, why do they need all this money? There's a part of me that wonders about the war in Ukraine and the Israel's wars with everybody in the Middle East. Is that what we're gearing up for? Are we gearing up for a world war in the Middle East? I remember when I used to play Risk, right? Until I ended up in Australia in a corner screaming, "Stop it, leave me alone, there's only two of us left." But I remember that the way to win Risk was always to take over the Middle East. That was the way you won the world. It really was. And that's a game that they play.
Yep.
Constantly. True. Take over the Middle East and you have won the world. No. That's what they're doing. And that's what it's all gearing up to. Look at who's pals with who and why they're pals. And why is Epstein such a crucial part of all this and not knowing everything that went on there? Because it's not all just sex and drugs and rock and roll. There's sex and drugs and rock and roll and machinations, political machinations and all the rest of it. Everything that is frighteningly evil in our world is locked into that those documents and those photographs. Yeah. And everybody is affected by it. Everybody from the king of England, yep, down to the wee woman round the corner from me. We're all affected by it. So how do we attack them? It's not our politicians. Our politicians, God almighty, they're just pawns in a game. That's all they are. Who are the masters behind the game? And how do we do something about that? Burnham isn't a master. Burnham is an acolyte.
Puppet.
Thank you, puppet. That's the word I was looking for. They're all puppets. Politicians, puppets. That makes it easy to remember. It's who is above all this and why are they up there and what is their aim? That's the question. What is their aim? Is it to wipe out humanities and just have slaves? You know, just keep the ones that can be slaves? What is the point of what is going on? Is it just making money from... Think of the money they make from the war, from warheads and missiles and all the rest of the stuff, and Iran not having nuclear capability because that gives Iran the chance to fight back. I don't understand it because I'm just a wee woman that paints. That's what I do, okay? But I do understand that you have the big boys who are pulling all the strings, the puppet masters, the Geppettos of this world.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Iran stopped their little games in, I call it West Asia. It was called the Middle East, ladies and gentlemen, because it was the middle between London and India. And we named it the Middle East, and we've all been programmed to call it the Middle East. And it was one of my guests in the midweek show I did one time who educated me. It's actually West Asia. It's not Middle East. It's only Middle East if you're taking the British Empire, colonialism, imperialism. That's all the problems that we've got, Phil. But here's the other thing. Your man Burnham, he wants to scrap the Barnett formula. I'm going to need Techie to help me here. I can't get the pictures up here. Oh, there we go. Andy Burnham wants to tear up funding model for the Scottish Parliament. That's what he wants to do. Will that be the final straw for people? Well, when they make us just another wee region of England, Phil?
Well, the Barnett formula, for those that aren't aware of it, is a UK Treasury mechanism that automatically adjusts funding for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland based on changes in public spending in England. Okay, that is it in a nutshell. And it was devised in the late 70s by the Treasury as a short-term solution to cabinet disputes ahead of the 79 devolution referendums.
Oil.
And really, yep. So what we're looking at is basically we had a situation where what we've got is a guy called, why go into the details? We can look it up yourself if you want to understand what's really going on with this. The situations and as to your question, there won't be a Scottish Parliament as it continues. This has been on the slippery slope. The illusion of handing much of the spend to Scotland is very simply a clever trick that the British government does in terms of which powers are devolved and which powers are reserved. What they do is basically they say, oh no, we'll give you the power over education and healthcare, your two biggest spends. And everyone thinks, oh, wonderful, we get control over that. But in reality, what happens every single year is if your inflation is 6% and your increase in funding is 3%, then the number goes up, but in real terms, it's going down. And you've got less bang for your buck. And basically what they do every single year is cut the real terms funding to the Scottish government, who year after year have to make cut after cut after cut. And what happens? You undermine, you present the people who are not paying attention, which, let's be honest, is most of us, with the illusion that you are actually increasing the number. Well, it's up 20 million from last year, or it's up 200 million from last year, but in real terms, it's down 200 million. And what you buy...
Yeah, but those unionists also shout, but the unionists all shout at us, Phil, your cuts, the SNP are making cuts, when it's actually the unionists who are making the cuts that force them into the
Correct.
cuts.
And the game continues. And what you're seeing is, what we saw was Alex Salmond create an effective government when he was in power. Then he handed it over to Nicola, who, as we know, has sold us out along with her little cabal, which involved John Swinney, Humza, and particularly Angus Robertson. He's the only one that's known a shot at being the leader. He'll be next. He'll line up for that one. So don't believe it. It's no change. He's not reliable. He's the guy that denied you your rights, SNP members. He's the guy behind the scenario that removed the power of the vote at conference to accept or deny policy change. So these are not our friends. These are not our people. They don't work for us. They work for the opposition. And what we're going to see now is reform win, regardless of what Andy Burnham does or says. They might have a fighting chance. They know they might have a better fighting chance with Burnham, which is why he's in. But when Farage becomes the new leader, you can. They may keep the Welsh, Northern Irish, and Scottish executives in place, and I say deliberately executives because it was Alex Salmon who very cleverly changed the name of the Scottish Executive to the Scottish Parliament, proved it was a functioning Parliament because he created an effective Scottish administration stroke government. But right now, really, we should revert to executive because this is still a big council and they're ineffective. So what you're going to get is even the greater erosion of powers to the Scottish executive. And what you're going to see is this big council will be hollowed out even more, but still given enough power so that the blame sticks to them. And the sad thing is that our so-called leaders, they're not our leaders, they're the sheep of the leaders of the British government, who are themselves sheep of those who are really in control. So what you've effectively got is we're just following. If you're supporting SNP right now, you're following sheep that are taking us to the slaughter. We're heading to the abattoir, I'm afraid, folks. So it's time for rebels. It's time to stand up. It's time to be the black sheep, and let's rock and roll and do something about it.
Yeah, I think we need to do something, but that's the fact. He's going to scrap the Barnett formula. It goes back to 2014, Eva, where they get the Westminster got the fright of their life that we get so close to independence, and now they're going to weaken it, as Phil says, and weaken it, and see it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. It'll go from SNP bad to Holyrood bad to Holyrood bad, and it's all part of that to bring us to heel, to get us back cowed and, not talking about independence.
It's exactly what it is, but it goes back, well, yeah, they got the fright of their lives in 2014, but if you look at the characters that are around Burnham now, particularly Purnell, whom you were talking about earlier, I had to Google to remind myself of what he was responsible for. But he's the guy that was trying to, or was wielding the axe at the Department for Work and Pensions when Gordon Brown was the Prime Minister. He suggested at one stage, and I'm reading this directly, he proposed that if you were unemployed or a pensioner and you'd had a crisis loan from the government, so you're dependent on means-tested benefits, and you've had a crisis loan from the government, Purnell suggested you be charged interest on it of rates up to 26%. That's the kind of guy who's going to be working alongside Andy Burnham. So he had no compunction in making that proposal in respect of those who were in dire financial need. So he's going to thoroughly enjoy himself wielding the axe as far as the executives of the devolved assemblies are concerned. So where are we? We're stuck. We need an electoral event. We need John Swinney to do what Angus Brendan McNeill says almost every single day on social media: collapse the Scottish Parliament and call a de facto referendum. There is no point in trying to get international recognition without a democratic, recognised electoral event. But these things all come, but they come in an order. And the quicker we get that electoral event, the better, because there is no chance, none, that Andy Burnham, if he becomes Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, is going to grant consent to a Section 30 referendum. But I'm just curious about this, because it was said either by or on behalf of John Swinney not that long ago that it was uncertainty about Starmer's future that was stalling John making the request for the Section 30. So we were told prior to May's election that the request would be made immediately. The SNP got a majority. They didn't get their majority. So what they did instead was had a wee pantomime in the Scottish Parliament about how the Scottish Parliament should have those powers. They're now doing a similar motion in Westminster, when actually what John could do is he could ask Starmer now, before he departs, to give consent to the Section 30, because Starmer might just be in the mood for doing that. And if Starmer refuses, he can then write to Burnham anyway, whether it annoys the Prime Minister, and ask him what his view would be and keep the ball rolling. But instead of that, we've got delay after delay after delay. SNP are mired in their own scandals, and they don't want to go to the country, if you like, just now, because they're concerned about what the outcome might be for them as individuals, when we know that support for independence is in the majority. So Scotland needs that electoral event sooner rather than later, or we're going down and down and down with the rest of the sinking ship that is the UK.
Yeah. I read a long while ago, Mark, it was about, back in the 1970s, the equality gap was getting closer, the poverty gap rather was getting closer. People, the gap between the guy at the bottom and the guy at the top was shrunk down. But in 1979, there was a change, because the people on the right in the Tory party, they weren't happy. So in they came to fix that, so that the workers and the lower paid knew their place. And they've slowly eroded away till now the gap has grown exponentially between the bottom and the top, and the poverty gap continues to grow. And it's the same with devolution. They put in this devolution and they suddenly went, wait a minute, this could cause us problems. This could affect our cash flow. And they've been chipping away at it and chipping away at it and chipping away at it. And this, removing the Barnett formula and giving us the same amount of money, say, as Manchester Council or the Newcastle Council, it's just part of that, pulling back the decent things that were getting done for the Scottish people. That's what this is all about, making us just a region of England.
Completely. I mean, it's interesting if you look at, Andy Burnham. I mean, there was some things in the press about his wife. Andy Burnham is not a man of the people. Andy Burnham is a multi-millionaire. His wife has, received this is an extremely wealthy power couple, financially speaking. So he is part of that machine. He is not going to represent the working person, the normal person, I would say. And what I find curious, I mean, you flashed up the image there about Joanna Cherry talking about the asking for the right to hold a referendum and saying it's performative. It is performative. We know it's going to get rejected. Mm-hmm. But there's only so many times. What I would do is there's only so many times that Westminster can reject this before it strengthens the argument for going down the UN decolonisation route. So that's the gun that should be, metaphorically, I should point out, should be held against Starmer or Burnham's head. If you refuse it, we will go down the route, because you're now saying we do not, if we're a democratic and equal part of the union, we do not have a mechanism for getting out of this unholy union. So if I had faith in the SNP, I could think, I would say they might be boxing clever here, and this is what they're attempting to set us up for. But I don't believe it, and I do believe Joanna Cherry when she says, it's going to be more performative. Look at us, perpetually moaning, but not actually doing anything material to move us towards independence, which is, in my view, the answer to all our issues. When we've got full control, full fiscal control, full sovereign control, we can start making the decisions to reverse some of those ruinous policies that, you're right, were brought in back in 1979 that have just chipped away and widened the gap between rich and poor.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting, that we're getting told, and ladies and gentlemen, over the next couple of weeks, you're going to get told about this great guy, Andy Burnham. What a wonderful human being, and, philanthropist, and he looks after kittens, and all that shit's coming down the pipe. But here, when he was the mayor of Manchester, and I think it was Phil alluded to his wife, they're a power couple, or it was Mark maybe. His wife was at that time, she was working as the chief marketing and customer officer for Octopus Energy. And lo and behold, Octopus Energy were given a huge contract to put in all the infrastructure for electrical vehicles in and around the greater Manchester area. Just no coincidence, I'm sure, Terry. That would mean, it wouldn't be graft, corruption, and, jobs for the boys. That's the kind of guy we're getting.
It is indeed the kind of guy we're getting. But apropos of something even, strange in some ways, I've already told you my dad was Liverpudlian and all about the World Cup and all that. What I didn't tell you was that my dad's cousin was Cilla Black. And she is responsible.
Surprise, surprise!
She is responsible for these two because that's where they met on Surprise, Surprise.
Really?
Andy and his wife. Yes, they did. And now they are mega, mega millionaires. And it's because of how they've wheedled and wangled and all the rest of it. It's funny how when she was, when he became mayor of Manchester, that this thing happened with Octopus. It's quite amazing how these things happen, isn't it? It's
coincidental, just a coincidence.
I'm always astonished by it. I'm like, oh, how did that happen? I have no idea. I haven't. But one of the things that I think is quite funny is we talk about Scotland will become a region of the UK. It already is, according to so many of the bloody English that come here. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say bloody English. That's racist, isn't it? Didn't mean that. I meant the lovely English who come here, who come up and they say how lovely it is to be in Scotland, blah, blah, blah. And you say, are you going up to Clackmannanshire? Where's that? Because Scotland is one thing. Scotland is a region like Yorkshire and Lancashire and Cornwall to so many people who come here. And when they come here, they're always so thrilled and they buy their houses because they're so cheap. What a bargain it is. And we're getting free prescriptions and our children can go to university. It's amazing. How are we managing to do that? The Barnett formula, yeah? What's that? They don't care and they don't understand. They don't understand why we want independence. Actually, I was talking to my neighbour yesterday who is English. He's a lovely man, absolutely lovely man, apart from the shirt he was wearing with lions on it. But he's a lovely man. And chatting away to him and I was talking about something or other. And we got on to the subject of independence. And he said, well, I'm not really against it in, that much. And I said, what do you mean that much? And we had this hour-long talk on his doorstep about independence. And at the end of it, he said, I think I might be interested in finding out more. And I thought, oh, that's a win-win. Because if we can talk to people one-to-one about why independence will benefit us, then we will get people coming over. It's difficult to talk to crowds of people at a time and convince them. We try that, and you can do it if you're Alex Salmond. You can't do it when you're Terry Howson. You've got to get out there and talk to people face to face.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what we all need to do. We all need to get out and talk to people more about how independence is the only way forward for Scotland. Because when Farage becomes our Prime Minister, the first thing that's going to happen is that Holyrood will become, that big building with the big flag on it, the government UK and Scotland? Holyrood will become part of that, or it will become a big social security centre, something like that. It will be finished.
Yeah.
We will not have a parliament.
Well,
we won't have a chance of independence. Our time to do it is now and not some wonderful time in the future. We're running out of time and they're going to make damn sure we run out of time. The Andy Burnhams of this world and all the rest of them. God help us. Poor old Corbyn. If only he'd been able to get through, we would be looking at a proper Labour Party, a party that was about socialism and not just another right-wing party. Because that's all they are. So, yes, talk to people about independence. Explain why it is so important for every last one of us in Scotland to be independent, to have a nation that's recognised as being a nation. I had a girl talking to the other day who was trying to fill in something about, she's an immigrant, she's from Poland or somewhere like that, and she's trying to fill in this form, and she said, I can't find Scotland on this anywhere. And I said, oh, sorry, but it'll be under United Kingdom. Do you know that United Kingdom wasn't even on the form? Wonder why that was. If you're an immigrant trying to register, just a thought. But Scotland, how many times do you go to put your address up and I think you've got to go through hundreds of things and to realise that Scotland's no there? You've got to go to the UK. Scotland has got to be back as being a country, independent.
Yeah, and on the doors is the only way to do it, folks, and there's only one way to do that. Get yourself into the Alliance to Liberate Scotland and start knocking on doors. But to round this topic off, the question is this, Phil. Are we getting the same guy? Is it just is it a clone? And it reminded me of this. Now, I know a favourite thing of yours was when Noam Chomsky was interviewing Andrew Marr. And if I can get this to come up on the screen, I'm having awful trouble getting up my stuff. Techie, can you put up that my Chomsky quote here? If it will go up, I just can't for some reason.
It pops up and disappears again quickly.
I can't get it up.
Where misses?
There we go. There we go. In 1980, he said to Mar asked, how could you know he was self-censoring? I'm not saying you're self-censoring. I'm sure you believe everything you're saying. What I'm saying is that you believe something different. You wouldn't be sitting where you're sitting. My contention is, Burnham wouldn't be on the reckoning for this if he wasn't thinking what he had to think. They say, Techie, can you take that off the screen for me, please? I can't get rid of it. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely true, and we've been saying it from the start pretty much because it's how it's been for quite some time. You do not get close to the seat unless you think in a particular way or believe certain beliefs, or more importantly, or favourably, you're actually controlled. You're in the club. And as another one I'm very often quoting is George Carlin. It's a big club and you ain't in it. And it's the bottom line, because you want to check that one out, go to YouTube, George Carlin's The American Dream, 4.5 minutes on at Parliament. I was asked, can you summarise what politics is all about in 5 minutes or less? I went, no, but I know someone that can. George Carlin, The American Dream. Go listen to it, folks. It absolutely nails what's going on. And it's happening all over the West. The irony is the only democracies are outside the Western world. That's a scary thing. That's what we're beginning to see, which is a tragedy. But anyway, the problem, of course, is that once you have that kind of control, those who, like Corbyn, would revert to democracy, that's the last thing those who really are in control want. They want to continue their scheme to make themselves richer and make you poorer. And that's what's happening. That's why we're approaching one in foreign poverty. That's why it's not going to change. It's why you have to be the change. And what Terry was talking about is something that Alex made very clear. All we have to do, each one of us who believes in independence, is speak to one person and change their opinion. And that's how we got from 28% yes to 51, 52% yes. Just get that message over. Spend a wee bit of time researching what's really going on. I mean, all you have to do is spend an hour a week watching this show, and you will get yourself some useful information. But go beyond that. There's plenty out there. I think I've got on my Facebook page a big list of truth speakers on what's happening in Ukraine, and what's happening in Gaza, on what's happening around the world, what's happening economically, why the people are being fleeced, why the current leaders of the West are ripping us off and stealing everything, why you get more and more billionaires, and why everything's costing more, and why your energy's going up. All of this kind of stuff's all explained if you go and look for it. So let's get together, folks. Working together and not being splitters. Unification of the Yes movement is the answer, and there are enough of us already, but we can always welcome more friends into the pen, where we can all get together and break out and stop being sheep.
Yeah, well said. The clock's kicking on, Eva, and I want to go into a couple of things, and this is a 2-in-1. This week also saw the sentencing of Peter Murrell, and he got his 5 years and 3 months for embezzling the party funds. And of course, the unionists again, we need an inquiry. We need an inquiry, but don't inquire into our money or anything we're doing. It's just using it as a big stick to beat us. And that's what angers me so much about this present SNP. They give so many sticks to the people who hate us and hate Scotland and hate our cause. But there's that. But what came out, and there's several things in this, was the whistleblowers, as they called them, people we know, Alison Graham and Cynthia Guthrie. And they explained what a lot of we all know, a lot of us know, is that when questions were getting asked of the SNP and Nicola Sturgeon about the funds, they were shut down, they were bullied, they were made to be quiet. Everything was to just go away. Don't ask awkward questions. You could affect our funding, our donators. And what these people are saying is, and it's still, we've not had an apology for anyone who donated and gave. There has been absolutely no apology given. And when Swinney was asked about an apology,
hello, good afternoon. You're turning the tables on Russell Fidlian there, but what do you say to the accusation from those former SNP members who say they were bullied when it came to the finances?
Well, I gave my answer in Parliament to that question.
So you're refusing to offer an apology to them?
Well, I gave an answer which said that I'd apologise to all party members for all that had been handled here. So that's what I'm going to say about it.
Do they have specific allegations of bullying, being bullied on the NEC?
I've apologised for what's happened in this case.
Do you believe that Nicola Sturgeon and other senior figures were bullies?
No, I don't.
You said in the chamber you apologised to party members. Now, the two whistleblowers are not party members, so can you clarify, does your apology...
Well, I apologise I apologise to party members who are the ones that have got legitimate interest in this, because they're the ones that had money stolen from them. They're the victims.
So do they have legitimate interest in this, the former members of
the victims of this are the Scottish National Party members whose money was stolen by Peter Murrell in an embezzlement.
But that seems quite clear that you're not offering an apology to Alison Graham, Cynthia Guthrie for their allegations of bullying.
We've been round the houses of this before. You're joining the queue, Alistair, which I'm surprised about, of putting words into my mouth. I've given you my answer on this question.
There's also proposals for a Scottish Government Committee and Westminster Joint Review. Are you keen?
The Parliament's decided there's not going to be an inquiry into these issues, and it's absolutely nonsensical for there to be an inquiry into the victim. When did we start inquiry into the victims of crime?
Only those party members with legitimate complaints. All the people who are not party members, not legitimate. People who've left the party don't count. Absolute disdain. It's just from everything we do and everything he does, the disdain they have for the people is quite breathtaking and very annoying, Eva.
I think that John Swinney, others around him, and we and other commentators should be very careful about what we say, because there should be an ongoing police investigation in respect to those matters which seem not to have been investigated the way that some of us would have expected them to be. And what I think is heartbreaking for our movement, for the unity of our movement and for Scotland's future, is that when you look at the list of people who were on the SNP NEC at the relevant time, so let's say elected in autumn 2020 as the result in part of the Good Guys campaign, some of these people were very, very good and kind, concerned and dedicated people. And I include in that Caroline McAllister, who was elected as the Women's Convener, and Lynn Anderson, who was elected as the Equalities Convener. Now, they had to resign, but they, at that time, were concentrating very much on the questions of self-ID and gender recognition reform. And they were right in what they said then. And their departure from the SNP meant that it was very easy for a policy to develop that obviously had drastic, expensive consequences. So if you look at this as a couple of things running in tandem, Nicola Sturgeon had an agenda which we refer to as the woke agenda on one track, and on the other track was a financial issue. And it's no coincidence that the people who resigned or who were forced out were those who did not subscribe to that woke agenda. Yeah. And it's as plain as the nose on your face. So what ought to happen is that there should be a police investigation about where is the ring-fenced referendum fund. There is substantial correspondence, there is substantial proof to the effect, as we all know, that people who were not members of the SNP donated to that fund. There were public promises made that it would continue to exist and be available for a referendum. We know it's not, but it's clear that it was known way back in 2020 and 2021 that those funds were no longer available. And the longer that John Swinney tries to keep this underneath the carpet, the bigger the bulge under the carpet becomes. So something's going to give, and it may well be with Stuart Campbell and Wings Over Scotland and his appeal for people that he made within the last few days for those who donated and are not happy with the explanations that have been given, to do something about it, in essence, by being in touch with him. So it's important that that sort of citizens' work continues, as well as pressure on the police and the Crown Office to justify what they have or have not done so far, on the one hand. But on the other, what you've got this week as the result of the recent decision of the Court of Session that the policy of trans people being allowed to be accommodated in a prison for the gender into which they self-identify was unlawful. And the result of that, after them being embarrassed into it last week, is that the government announced via the Scottish Prison Service Chief Executive, Miss Pollock, originally, she said that the admissions policy would not alter in meantime. And then, of course, that guidance on the Scottish Prison Service website disappeared, page unable to be found, followed by press releases from the Scottish Government to the effect that they would accept the decision. Yes, of course you'll accept the decision. It's the law. And those who make the law are obliged to obey the law. So men will not now be housed in women's prisons with immediate effect. However, here's the rub, and this is really important. For Women Scotland, have explained, and others on their behalf have explained, that the government accepts, the Scottish Prison Service accepts, that since at least 2006, men were being accommodated in women's prisons, because they say they can't go back beyond that because they don't have the records. Well, yet again, another wee bit of free legal advice, which I suggest the Scottish Prison Service, John Swinney, and the current Minister for Justice, is it Neil Gray, has a look at. Just Google the name Stephen Ray, otherwise Sandra McRae, because Stephen, otherwise Sandra, was a trans-identifying male who was a solicitor in Scotland in the 1990s and had sex change surgery and was imprisoned for financial irregularities in, I think, 1998. So if you were a woman in a prison where Miss or Mr. Ray or McRae was housed between 1998 and his release, you also have a claim. So if I can work that out from Google, then how come Linda Pollock, the current Chief Executive of the Scottish Prison Service, signed an affidavit that said records are not available for the period before 2006? Now, I'm not breaching anybody's confidentiality because that affidavit is public knowledge, but that affidavit does not sit well with information that is publicly available. So if anybody knows any women who were in jail from the late 1990s onwards, I strongly suggest that you make contact with your own lawyer. Not me, I'm not touting for business, I don't do that kind of work, but you pursue your claim and you might find you're able to get financial assistance via J.K. Rowling's fund and bring the Scottish Government and the Scottish Prison Service the justice that has been denied the women of Scotland for donkey's years. But go back to the beginning, thanks to the efforts of For Women Scotland and Women Won't Wheesht, founded by Caroline McAllister, Lynn Anderson, and promoted constantly by Joanna Cherry, justice will be done.
Well said. So what you've learnt on here today, folks, is that the politicians and the establishment lie. What a shocker, Rooney. But this was the thing, Mark, you were around as well within the SNP and knowing what was going on. the people who complained were marginalised, were demonised, were bullied. You know, and not a hint of an apology or a mea culpa. We got it wrong. We made a mistake. You were right. We're never going to let it happen again. And they would have more credibility. But that procrastination by Swinney actually only just makes people like me and you and others angrier. You're on mute, mate.
Apologies. Yeah, I mean, I saw I think Nicola Sturgeon denied any bullying when she got interviewed by Laura Grunsberg, and yet there's video evidence that was taken at her speaking directly to the NEC members, where she, you know, shut down the inquiry and the questions that were being asked. I mean, they remind me a little bit on the Black Knight and Monty Python. You know, they are in complete denial about the damage that's been done here. And I mean, the question I have I'd love to ask Nicola Sturgeon is, clearly she lied when she said that she didn't shut down the request for information into the finances. Does she know she's lying? Does she believe that, you know, that everybody can't see her for exactly what she's doing and how she's handled it? It's bizarre. And you're right. If John Swinney just turned around and says, you know what, this was I bet I will not use the word I was going to use that begins with cluster. If he just admitted that this is one monumental mess, there would be a faint possibility that they could draw a line under it and move on and regain some of the credibility. All he's doing with the position that he's adopted is just continuing to extract credibility and insult, and the wider independence movement, and shows complete disdain for the SNP membership, past and present.
Yeah, but that is the problem, Terry. I mean, we had a by-election in Scotland this week where there was only 13% turnout. This is why people stay at home, because the politicians lie, they deny, they refuse to do mea culpa. And that's what's happening here. The whistleblowers are telling the truth. We know they're telling the truth. That was shut down. People were bullied, people were marginalised, and John's denying it, and he's marginalising and denying it still.
I think that a lot of the problem is that we've been doing the whistleblowing or shouting or whatever. We've been doing that for quite a long time, but it's no longer us. The population are doing it. The population are turning against it. Look at the way they are with Starmer. The Labour Party wanted him out. It wasn't just because they didn't want reform in. They wanted him out. The same way as the vote for the SNP dropped dramatically at the last election. The people are becoming scunnered more and more and more every day. They're starting to see the truth. Even dyed-in-the-wool SNPers, people who have been part of that cult for many years, are starting to see that it's not quite kosher anymore. I'm just throwing in a wee Burnham word there for you. Right? It's not kosher anymore. It's wrong. The whole system is knackered, absolutely and utterly knackered. And how do we fix it? We fix it with independence. Always, it always comes back to that in my book. Scotland needs out of this corrosive union, this union which is affecting every single moment of our lives. We need out of it, and we need to start again, but we need to start clean, and we need to start with real people, and we need to start with honesty and straightforwardness, and people who are dedicated to independence, not people who pay lip service or toff their cup, whatever it is you do with your hat, to the idea of independence. It's about gaining that. Without that, we are absolutely stuck in a corner, unable to do anything. But on a last note, I want to add something on here before I go, because I'm going to get cut off again. I know it. My next door neighbour, Dean, the Englishman, who's very nice, offered me, first of all, he asked me, where was my Scotland shirt? Because he was wearing his one with the lions. And I said, that was yesterday. And he said, how did they go? And I said, you bloody well know, so stop asking me. And then he said, I could give you one of these. I've got one upstairs. I politely turned it down. Well, you can imagine how politely I turned it down. And he said, well, okay then, thanks very much. I'll remember that. But he still wants to vote for independence, so that's fine by me.
That works. The clock's kicking on, really running out of time here. Now, as you know, Phil, and everyone in this show and anyone who watches knows, I am an abstentionist. I don't think we should be sending anyone to Westminster. It's a waste of time, an absolute waste of time. We know that since 1934, two things, you were involved in one of them, which was, of course, the fox hunting amendment to English fox hunting, is one victory for the SNP, and the other one was the claim of right, no one stood against it. But that's been it. That's all we've achieved. In all that time, we wouldn't. You also know that I'm a Republican, and I certainly don't like monarchs, but certainly the King of England, when I'm getting told that he's my monarch when he's most certainly not my monarch, or any monarch of Scots. But a lot of bird went down. Now, we could go into never mind that, but whether she's good, bad, or indifferent, but she went down and she has really upset the apple cart.
Only so that I can serve the people of Arbroath and Broughty Ferry. My first allegiance is, and always will be, the sovereign people of Scotland. I do swear that I will be faithful and...
She was into Charlie. But the point that she made, and it's, you know, the fact she said her loyalty is to the sovereign people of Scotland, which it should be. And it upset all the right people. I mean, they're demanding she retake it, demanding this, that, and the next thing because they've offended England and the English king. I'm with Laura on this one. I could get to like that woman. She keeps up that disruptive behaviour at Westminster. It's a sham that we have to swear an allegiance to an English king.
It most certainly is, but the problem is I believe it's just for show. What I'm looking at the SNP doing right now is reading the room finely or a little as the gap between those supporting independence and those that support the SNP continually grows and exceeds 20%. They're beginning, how do we get some of this back? And as I've always said, and I've said for a long time, and others before me, watch what people do, not what they say. And what I'm seeing here is a reaction, I believe, from the SNP think tank, of which she is part. She was part of this. She was guiding the MPs on policy to listen to what Sarah Sailors and are doing, and what the Claim of Right says, and what the people of Scotland want, and the growing gap. What those who have had enough of the SNP, left for Alapa, left for other parties, or just left the delusion that was the SNP, the illusion that is the SNP. So I'm not convinced by her at all, not in the slightest. And I hear the phony accent bit, understand she went to Dundee, but also believe she went to a prep school in England. She's currently a student.
But this is not about her. This is not about her background or her double-barrel name. I'm saying
but what it is about, Roddy, what it is about is the SNP being traitors to the cause. This is what this is about to me, and for me, she's part of that, and she might well be one of ours, but I don't consider the SNP leaders or any of their top people as ours, because they're bought, they've sold us out, and that's why I don't hold her in any esteem whatsoever. I see her nodding her head the same way as others do when it's a bit of a telltale when you're doing police interviews. Maybe it was just nerves, but I don't know. I don't know enough about her, but she's part of a mechanism that sold us down the river, and I do not believe for 1 minute that she's going to fight for causing a snap election in the Scottish Parliament, as Angus Brennan, as we're all calling for. I think she's got her snout in the trough and is very comfortable. Thank you very much. Is going to be doing all right. She'll take all that. So, you're honest, I'm not kissing anybody's backside for this crap, because we've had enough of it.
Yeah, well, to hell with the English king. Here's the thing here, Eva. While this is all going on, the Sturgeon of Assisi was appearing on the television. This headline was used again to beat up, joins the UK government. She played the Deputy Prime Minister in a TV drama with Gove as the Prime Minister. Now, can you imagine Alex Salmond, Margaret MacDonald, Winifred Ewing, Margaret Bain, Margaret Ewing, Donald Stewart? I mean, the list could go on. Can you imagine them? Yeah, I'll do that. I know you're laughing. I'm raging.
how the mighty have fallen. You've gone from an audience of adoring, admiring thousands filling up the SECC a few short years ago to now watching the spectacle of your man getting locked up for 5 years and 3 months, and an awful lot of people internationally ripping the absolute pure you-know-what out of motorhomes and gold pens. And look behind me, bookcases, which I may remind people, Matt bought for me off eBay and built them up. But of course, we've been having jokes.
And your home, and your van.
And the van that he bought with his money that he earned. But I'm needing more bookcases, so we're looking forward to the car boot sale or the police sale when we maybe can get some more. What I won't need is a ladder. In any event, she's made an absolute fool of herself, and the longer that she carries on in the public eye, the more difficult it's going to become for her. But what she did the other day, and you've got to laugh about this because it's so pathetic, is in the midst of folk wondering, what did she know? When did she know it? What does she remember? What has she forgotten? What about that meticulous forensic ability that she had to recollect that seems to let her down at the strangest of times? What was she doing? Flashing on social media a picture of her photo of how she had just got her ear pierced for the 3rd time. I mean, seriously, that's where we've got to. So playing the part of the Deputy Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, how could she even sit in the room with these folk, knowing that the people that she was filming with had no respect for her, no respect for the position that she had held in Scotland, and no respect for the democratic rights of the sovereign nation of the people of Scotland? She went there, she sat with them, and she took the King's shilling. And that says it all.
As our friend Lloyd would say, it's like show business for some of them, and that's what it is to her. But here's another headline I loved on it, Mark. A pawn for better together. It's just nauseating.
I think the trajectory that Nicola Sturgeon, she craves the spotlight, and she's not going to get that. So, I wouldn't put it past her to turn up as a sort of token jock on EastEnders. And maybe they could work in Peter Murrell. He was he could pass off as the 3rd Mitchell brother. I honestly do not know. I mean, she cannot read the room. She is totally bottomed out here. I'm no fan of Nicola Sturgeon, as you know, and I'm embarrassed on her behalf.
Yeah,
it's the Scottish cringe, and it's all down to her.
Yeah, it is, Terry. It was absolutely nauseating.
It makes me ashamed to call myself a woman. But then again, I don't know if Nicola calls herself a woman anymore. It's difficult to work out. I think it's hilarious, the fact that she's playing the Deputy Prime Minister of the UK. Wasn't she always a Deputy Prime Minister of the UK?
Well, she did say she was British. Here's another one. I go back to that list I gave you. Not one of them would have admitted to being British.
Exactly. She's always been towards England. Let's face it, she couldn't wait to get to London. And I think it was funny when Eva said that Gove sitting there despising her for what she had been for the position that she'd held. Nicola herself despised that position, otherwise she wouldn't have abused it the way she did. I am so tired of these people I was one of them. I know I've said this before, and I'm going to have to take a pill in a minute, but I was one of those people who absolutely adored her. I worshipped her. I had friends phoning me from Ireland when she was doing the COVID thing, said, Terry, put the telly on, she's on. That's how much I loved this woman. Yeah. And when she let me down, oh my God, the urge to go after her with something. A nappy, probably.
Well, as they say, Terry, hell hath no fury like a woman.
Oh, it's just beyond. I really have no time for her whatsoever. She opens her mouth and all I hear are lies. That's all I hear.
As the clock's beating this, Phil, I'm going to give you something I'm not afforded in my house, which is the last word. I don't ever get the last word in my house. And I know you're desperate to do it, because we were talking about the King of England, King Charlie, who's getting he's been allowed to touch our crown jewels and get treated like a king in Scotland when there's no King of Scots. And for anyone watching that doesn't know, Since 1714, there's been no monarch of Scots since Queen Anne died in 1714. He's a foreign monarch. Anyway, but Scotland's going to get the pleasure of it, an extra, we're going to be paying 8.9 million next year to give them, because their grant's going up in 2 years' time to 100 million quid. Nice work if you can get it. Is it? Aye. Phil?
Yes, it is, and you get to ride about in a royal carriage doing that. You could get a wee machine with a wee arm going like that and just be falling asleep. But the cost of the taxpayer-funded grant for the UK monarchy will increase by an increase of over 45 million in the 26-27 year. Now, this is controversial to say the least. However, it's the tip of the iceberg if you actually dig into it, because it's going to go up, okay? The sovereign grant, which pays for the royal family's duties, will increase from 86.3 million in 24-25 to 132 million in 25-26. But you add to that the Crown Estate. It's actually, that part is funded by the Crown Estate, which is a net revenue profit of 1.1 billion. Right?
It's tribute. It's tribute. That's all it is. It's tribute.
It is. So, and it should be. It's for the Scottish people. We need to take that back in independence and cut these parasites. It's not just the chief parasites. It's all the hangers-on that get paid for this. But what is the real cost? Anti-royalists like us, all of us. I mean, it wasn't a big deal for me. It was way down the list of things to fix. Poverty being the first one. But then when I look at the amount of money involved, it's actually closer to £500 million. That's what the royalists get. So, and how's that? The real cost of the royal family to taxpayers is around 510 million a year, nearly 6 times more than the 86 million paid last year, state funding from the annual sovereignty grant. So don't be conned by this. So the Republican group in UK stay, or people who support the Republic, that its higher total includes other factors such as security, which is not counted in the sovereign grant, which last year ran to about 150 million. And how can we talk about cutting the winter fuel allowance? How can we talk about 1 in 4 in poverty, children, while wasting £500 million on the royals? And this is one of the richest families on the planet. Part of the people that are, so it looks like they may be cutting down. The keeper of the Privy Purse, Sir Michael Stevens, who looks after the King's financial affairs, has previously spoken about the determination to deliver value for money in royal finances. So if it's anything to do with him, it looks like they might be cutting down on the buttered swan curry and flagons of claret. Good for the gout, but there you go. Don't eat your royal golden chariot, Charlie, even if you get hungry. Nah, total con. They're ripping us off. Let's get rid.
It just about the people, the public don't grasp it or grasp the cost. They don't. I remember seeing one time, dare I say, it was someone that supports the same football team as me, was getting, defending the monarchy and the Queen at the time as it was. He said, and I mean, she brings in about £20 million a year. Yeah. She's costing us £500 million, mate, but that 20 million you think she brings in is value for money, yeah, muppet you. Anyway, what put me up? Remember, she purred down the phone when the Scots were cheated out of their independence. Anyway, the clock's beating us, folks. Now, I don't know if we'll be back next week or not, because the Parliament's shut. The English one goes on for another couple of weeks. No doubt they'll come up with some shenanigans that will make me call the troops together again, maybe next week or the week after. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I want to go and spend the time doing nothing, actually, drinking gin. That's my plan. But until we see you and yours again, please, take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.